أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال تعالى في القرآن الحكيم في سورة يونس أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, it is He who made the sun as a bright light, and He made the moon glowing. وَالْقَمَرَ نُورًا وَقَدَّرَهُ مَنَازِلًا, and He measured for it, for the moon, different stages. لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ, so that you will all know the number of years, so you were able to count the number of years. لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ. Hisab here can mean so that you can work them out. وَالْحِسَابِ, so you can calculate. In this ayah are the indications for calculation and for using astronomical methods for knowing the stages of the moon. In this ayah, where it mentions wal-hisab as well, which we know means calculating. So before I go into the second part of fasting and those exempt, I want to mention a little bit about ru'ya, this issue of sighting of the crescent. How relevant is it? And there's difference of opinions. And we respect the difference of opinions, but the respect must be mutual of the other side. What is it based on? Two hadith, one from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, both are authentic, and we need to take both of them together for beginning and ending of fasting of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ, as Abu Hurairah says, Sumu li ru'yatihi al-hilal, or li ru'yatihi, wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, fa in ghubbiya alaykum فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةِ الشَّعْبَانِ 30. That Abu Hurairah said, the Prophet ﷺ said, fast by sighting it, meaning the crescent. Break your fast, which means, aftiru means Eidul Fitr, by sighting of the crescent. And if it is cloudy and overcast, then make Sha'ban 30. In other words, on the 29th Ramadan, at night time, you begin to look for the moon for the next month. If it is cloudy, that's for using this method, then you fast the next day, so you may for the end it's like that, sorry. For Sha'ban, for the beginning, of course, you're looking on the 29th day, 29th night, which comes the... I have to explain it. 29th is the day, but the night time when it comes will be the 30th. Potentially the 30th of Sha'ban. It will not necessarily be the 30th, because it's not necessarily 30, it's 29 or 30. So you begin to look for in Sha'ban at that time. If it is cloudy on that night, then you make Sha'ban the next day. You don't fast. You make Sha'ban 30 days. This is in here, the Prophet ﷺ said. And of course, in Ramadan, you make Ramadan 30. I think that's what happens. Or if you see it, you make it 29. The Prophet ﷺ said in another authentic hadith reported by Abdullah ibn Umar, he said, لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال. Don't fast until you see the crescent. Same idea. وَلَا تُفْطِرُوا حَتَّى تَرَوْهُ. And don't do fitr, Eid al-Fitr again, don't finish the fast of month of Ramadan until you see it. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ. If it's not able to see it, overcast, cloudy, فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ. Then, فَقْدِرُوا means calculate and work it out. فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ. Very important hadith, this one, to take with the other one. Majority of ulama put both these hadith together and said when the Prophet said فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ, then calculate it, they say it means make Sha'ban 30. So they gave it the same meaning from other hadith. They said the other hadith explains this one. It is a way of looking at it. However, it's not the only way. That's why Imam al-Nawawi, the famous Imam al-Nawawi of the 40 hadith, who was great Shafi'i scholar, in his famous works, Encyclopedia of Shafi'i Madhab, Al-Majmu', he says that فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ, there's difference of opinion on it. He said that there are those, including Abu Abbas ibn Surayj, who was famous. He died in 306 Hijri, which is around, add 700 plus years, around the 10th century. But he died 306 Hijri calendar. So it's very early on. You're talking just, he was around just 200 years or so after the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah. That he said that we take both hadith together for the Aam and public who have no knowledge of astronomy and they're out, and they didn't have internet and radio to broadcast. They are to follow the first hadith, that if it's cloudy and they just follow the ru'ya, they look and it's cloudy, they make 30. But for those who are astronomers, he said they should calculate it using astronomy. So if you calculate it, you'll also know in advance. Yeah, for calculation. Imam Nawawi says that is the opinion of Abu Abbas ibn Surayj and Ibn Qutayba and others. This is exactly his quote from Al-Majmu'. He said, they say, بحساب المنازل, which means calculate according to the stages of the moon. This is their opinion. Imam Nawawi then further argues, he says, however, the majority, which I follow as well, meaning Imam Nawawi, I don't agree with him. He says, but the majority say, and he quotes another hadith, which is interesting. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith in Bukhari Muslim, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Inna ummatun ummiyya la naktub wa la nahsub. Ash-shahr hakadha wa hakadha. The Prophet ﷺ said, we are a nation who are illiterate. We don't write and we don't calculate. For us, the month is either 30 or 29. That's what he said. Imam Nawawi uses this hadith and says, there you are, we don't calculate. So faqdiru means we just make it 30. But if we look at it further, and it wasn't just Abu Abbas ibn Surayj, ibn Qutayba and others at that time, but later on scholars came from later times who said we should turn to astronomy and use calculation. In the last more than a century or so, there was Ahmed Shakir, who was a great faqih and scholar and Muhadith as well, who said the same. In the last century also, Sheikh Tahir said the same, and others more and more saying the same thing as well, more recently. Subki, who also was a scholar from the 8th century, Hijri, so 15th century around, you're talking about how our working out, said that if somebody comes and says they've seen the moon, and the judge knows from astronomy that it's impossible for the moon to even been born, that his witness should be rejected. Subki said that. Subki is a famous scholar. Why I make these points is that it's not a new opinion. It's not a new opinion to use calculation. Okay? Now here I go further. About this hadith, we are ummah who are illiterate. Prophet ﷺ didn't prophesy that we'll always be an ummah to stay illiterate, and we were never going to write, and we were never going to go calculation. That's not the meaning of the hadith. Imam Nawawi is using it in a way as though we're never... Well, how come then he left the bit out where it said, La naktub, we don't write. And Imam Nawawi is writing in his Al-Majmu'. You see my point? He left that bit out and just said, we don't calculate. You can't pick and choose from the hadith. Of course the hadith doesn't mean that we are never going to write and we're never going to calculate. It means in the Prophet's time, you know, we didn't know, astronomy wasn't well known. They were living amongst mostly people who were illiterate, and they're going to be in the deserts and things. Of course, the method for them to find out the beginning of the month and the beginning of the next is to look to the sky. And they weren't going to know when the moon is going to be born either. How will they know? The first sight of the crescent is what's going to tell them. But the month actually starts when the moon is born. But you can't see the birth. So the method for the Prophet ﷺ at the time was going to be that which is easily possible for anybody. Any Baddu living in the valley and deserts, farming with sheep and camels. Yeah, he's not going to ring up the astronomer in the 7th century and say, by the way, what's the... And they're not going to send a telegram to him, or radio, nothing. So that's the method. But some people got obsessed with the crescent till this day, taking it literally. Oh, we can't do with calculation. Look, we're an ummah who are illiterate, we don't write. We are not illiterate. It's not prophecy for us to stay illiterate and not calculate. Some got obsessed with another hadith and mixed up astrology with astronomy. You know the difference? Astrology, you know these people who look at the stars and say, well, tomorrow you're going to earn so and so. Yeah? Let me look at your palm. And this time I'll look at the stars for you. That's not astronomy, that's astrology. The Prophet ﷺ said, Man iktabasa. Yeah. Iktabasa min al-nujum. Iktabasa shubatum min al-sihr. Inauthentically. Whoever borrows from the stars has taken something from magic. And remember, magic is forbidden for us. So some scholars understood this and said, oh, astronomy, astrology, it's all the same thing. They're looking at the stars. There's a massive difference between astrology and astronomy. Astronomers don't look and say, this is the state of the moon, and that means this for you. They don't say that. Okay? So even though the hadith is authentic, it's to do with astrology, not astronomy. So some people are obsessed with ru'ya, the sighting of the crescent. Of course, when we came to calculation, those who didn't want to follow calculation, there's still plenty of them, and we're still having to unfortunately follow them because our community can't come up to the stage where they'll accept anything else. But we have to educate and make them realize. Those who don't want to follow calculation, even though we follow calculation for all the 5 daily prayers, they've had no problem with that. You know who brought that forward? It was the astronomers as well who worked that out for us. We just look at a time on the thing. They don't go outside and say, hang on, the shadow's now 1 time long. You know, all these Muslims are not doing that. The Imams aren't doing that. They accept it there. They accept it daily. But when it comes to Ramadan, oh, no, I can't do it. Kuffar astronomers, look at them misleaders. Oh, it's the Jews who are the astronomers. Yeah, our usual enemies that we like to portray. We poor Muslims are going to be misled by them. So we're not going to accept it. then came the issue of those who took the calculation. So now calculation came because we were looking for the crescent again. That same obsession with the crescent. So, even though they were calculating, we're still getting difference of opinion. One saying one day, one saying the other. You know why? Because astronomers can't agree themselves at what age the moon crescent will be visible or not. There's a difference of opinion if you're going to go by the crescent. If you're going to go by the crescent, there's difference of opinion because atmosphere and various things and angles and things affect whether the crescent, whether the moon being at a certain age is going to be visible on that night before it sets. Hence, even with calculation, so the ones not using calculation said, see, even though you've got calculation, you still can't agree. That's no reason for not using calculation, by the way. That's nonsense. And then you have this idea or say, oh, you know, it's great. This is how it's meant to be. You're supposed to wake up and you're supposed to go out and suddenly find out it's Ramadan. As though there was some sort of sunnah in doing that. It's not linked with sunnah at all. To justify that we must follow this method, we're supposed to suddenly look, you know, all be looking out and say, oh. And actually, most people don't look out either. They listen out. As Saudi said it, and if you've got issues with Saudi, you say, oh, I'm not going to follow him. Saudi done it today? Right, we're doing it tomorrow. That's what's going on. That's the reality. Okay. Well, I'll tell you something. Even the hilal and the crescent, that's why there's no need for obsession with crescent. Crescent was relevant when there was no method to know when the moon was born. That's why crescent became relevant. Because that was the way they're going to see it. That the moon's born. The real thing is, what is precise in astronomy is the birth of the moon. Therefore, Ahmed Shakir and people like Sheikh Dawi, where I feel as well, where I follow, I would like to follow, but I will go with my community. That's also another issue. Is the birth of the moon is precise and the best way to follow the beginning of the Ramadan and the end of Ramadan. And that can bring unity to everybody. So, anyway, that's what we are. Reality in the end is that we have to try and follow as a community and decide. It is better if, and we've said this before, if a city at least gets together, if we're able to get the ulama together, but even that history is poor. When you get ulama together, and this happens in other cities, I know, being reported to me, they come together, they agree on what they're going to follow, and what's going to be the first day of Ramadan, or what's going to be Eid, and some of the imams and molanas go back and then they follow their big molanas, they change their mind and say, we're not going to do it. Because we've had orders from the top that not to follow this. But if we can get the committees or whatever it is now, if it's not the Molanas, of a particular city or a town together and agree on things, actually, we've said it before, we're willing to agree even on a method that we don't agree with for the keeping of the unity. For unity in our community, that's why we decided, even though we tried to follow calculation, it caused a split in our community. A majority of communities sadly wanted to follow the idea of when Saudi announces that we'll do it, and we're still following that. I don't have a problem with it. Yeah? It's not haram. Yeah? So we're all right to keep the unity with following that idea. But ideally, what I'm saying is, it is absolutely fine to work out for the next 10, 15, 20 years for all of us, for work, for school, so we don't come across like, you know, people who just don't know when this is and when that is. It is possible to work out and know when Ramadan is going to begin and when Eid is going to be. So Allah give us tawfiq to establish that one day, inshallah, as knowledge and understanding increases. Anyway, let us move on. Fasting is obligatory for whom? And what are the exemptions? Fasting is obligatory. The Prophet ﷺ said in authentic hadith, which is reported in Ahmed and Abi Dawood, Ibn Hibban, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رفع القلم عن الثلاثة عن المجنون حتى يبرأ وعن النائم حتى يستيقظ وعن الصبي حتى يحتلم. That the pen has been lifted. رفع القلم means, pen being lifted means the obligation has been removed for anything that Islam became as duties and responsibilities from three people, three kinds of people. From the mad person, mad means one who's lost their mind, because you need aql to be responsible. From the mad person until they become better. From the sleeping person until they wake up. SubhanAllah. Often we don't think about the mercy of Allah in this deen. Until the sleeping person, from the sleeping person, no obligation in sleeping person. Until they wake up. Until they wake up. And if you really want to follow the sunnah with that, there's no obligation to set an alarm to wake up for Fajr, by the way. Recommended, no obligation. But sleep with the intention to wake up for Fajr. Not sleep with the intention, I'm not going to get up for Fajr anyway. But whenever I wake up, it'll be fine. You sleep with the intention, and if you sleep through, whenever you wake up, you pray Fajr. And it is counted. But you sleep with the intention to get up for Fajr. حتى يستيقظ وعن الصبي حتى يحتلم. And from the child until they reach at the age of ihtilam. Ihtilam comes from the word for hulm. Hulm means dreams. Hulm means puberty. Actually, it means when you begin to have wet dream, which is a sign of puberty. That's why this word hulm and hulm, that's where it comes from. Until puberty as signs of maturity. Okay. The child becoming, that's why all menses is seen as a sign of maturity for girls, and puberty and the signs of puberty for boys, whether it's 14, 15, 16, it varies. Yeah. But that is linked, all of it is linked with understanding. What is key and common to all the three categories? There's a common thread, by the way. What is it? Aql. Sleeping person don't know what's going on. They can't think or decide anything. Yeah? Mad person, what's going on? Child, they have aql, but it's not fully formulated for them to decide. So the common thread is aql. That maturity, ability. So you might have a 15, 16-year-old, but they're very simple in their mind as well. So you don't just go by the age. Yeah. That's now, talking of young children, what about fasting and young children then? Because we do get from the Sunnah. Salah is different, but fasting is linked with ability. For Salah, authentic hadith, famous from the Prophet ﷺ was Marru awladakum bis-salah wa hum abna'u as-sab' wadribuhum 'alayha wa hum abna 'ashr, which is in Ahmed and Abu Dawood and Al-Hakim's Mustadrak. What did he say? The Prophet ﷺ said, order your children to pray. Means to do the salah 5 times a day. When they are 7 years of age. This order is an encouragement for them to start praying. You may be encouraging them before that, but here it says marru, tell them. وَاضْرِبُوا عَلَيْهِمْ or وَاضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا. Majority translate this, and I think I said this similar 2 years ago. This is the only time when you're allowed to smack children. But I don't believe it means that anymore, really. وَاضْرِبُوا, if you look at its meaning in classical dictionaries, it has so many meanings. It's such a comprehensive word. And the best meaning here for it, وَاضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهِ, ضَرَبَ عَلَى, means also to insist on something. To stand over someone and say, you're going to do it. To tell them off. وَاضْرِبُوا عَلَى means that as well. So I believe here it means don't smack them to pray, but insist on it when they are abna ashar, when they are 10 years of age. The Prophet says. So they've gone slightly beyond the 7. So wadribu, not to smack them, but insist on it, more pressure on it. All of that is to get them into a habit. So what happens after 10 and when they become the age of ihtilam? There you can just encourage them because they become responsible themselves. Nothing came that when they get to 12 and 13, now you can start really hitting them because they're going a bit older. As some people have the idea. The hitting can become even more severe. No, nothing like that at all. But this is for salah. Whereas for fasting, taqa, there's nothing like this for fasting. Order your children to fast, etc. by this. No, nothing like that. We had the hadith which I mentioned earlier on. And notice the hadith was linked with the fast of Ashura. When Rabi'a bint Ma'ud, one of the Sahabiyat, she reported that hadith. That when the announcement came from the Prophet ﷺ to fast on the day of Ashura, or if they were fasting to complete it, if they hadn't started to begin to fast then, we begin to fast and we encouraged our children to fast. And we took them to the mosque and we made toys of wool to occupy them, to prevent them from crying from the hunger. But I found this interesting. This hadith didn't come for Ramadan. How many days is Ashura fasting? 1 day actually at that time. 1 day, Ashura. Yeah? So they're encouraging them just for that 1 day. Nothing came about encouraging for 30 days. Nothing saying that nothing against it, but notice where it was. So from that, however, we get the idea of general encouragement for children who are not mature and who have not the obligation. So they get into habit. Our children, I think, I remember them fasting, some of them from 5, 6, 7 years of age, they fasted, all of them. Nowadays I say that and people are saying, oh my God, what kind of cruelty is that? And cruel this and cruel that. We use the words ourselves. No, non-Muslims, they will use them even more to us. But we should encourage them. I'm not saying it's an obligation. All children are not the same either. And it depends on the level of encouragement that you provide as parents of encouragement. Others we say, nothing came from the Sunnah. We say, all right, because it's a long fast, you have lunch and you have 2 fasts out of 1 day. Nothing came from the Sunnah about it. Nothing came against it, because their fast is not, they don't have to do it, so we can break it up for them. But at least it gets them into the feeling of a household which is there at suhoor time. Why are they up, my parents? We used to love it because we used to smell in those days, in the 60s, the smell of pranta at 3 or 4 in the morning. And we used to say, I wish I could go down, you know, and that was what used to go down and join in. Just a joining in. Make it a positive thing, not a negative thing. And then there's Salatul Fajr together, you know. Even though it's an obligation, but it's just, and you know, children, they're always excited to either stay awake late, any excuse. You can tell them clean all the household when it gets past the bedtime. Say, okay, Mum, anything else you'd like doing? Yeah, it's 10 o'clock now. Anything to stay awake late. And also to get up, because the adults are up, you see. Get up early. So anything to join in with the adults. So we should harness that and encourage that kind of thing. And iftar time as well, joining in that blessing, so they feel it's part of their lives for later on. Anyhow. Then we have those who have other and those who are not allowed to fast. First, those who are not allowed to fast, of course, are women who are in post-childbirth bleeding, or those who are on their menses. But unlike Salah, someone asked from the Tabi'een, they asked Aisha radiallahu anha, from Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, they said, why is it that we have to make up the fast when we're on our menses and we don't make up Salah? So Aisha radiallahu anha said, this is a sunnah. This is what we were told. Aisha radiallahu anha reports an authentic hadith in Bukhari Muslim. That's why she says, كنا نحيض على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فنؤمر بقضاء الصوم ولا نؤمر بقضاء الصلاة. When we used to be on menses at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning when he was around, obviously she's mentioning this when the Prophet ﷺ left the world. We were ordered to make up the fasts, but we were not ordered to make up the salahs, meaning from the menses time. So that's clear in that regard, that the fasting that is missed because of period, menses, must be made up from other days from later on in the same year. And it was the practice of Aisha radiallahu anha. She said that I used to make up my missed fasts from menses in Sha'ban. That's how late she left it. Because many fuqaha came on, you have to make it up as quickly as possible. No, the limit is the next Ramadan. Next Ramadan. It is not sunnah to make it up in Sha'ban, we don't say. It was Aisha radiallahu anha's practice. She said, I used to do that. Doesn't mean I say everybody else did that. So we have the rest of the year to make up those which are being missed. And that applies even if you start fasting and menses starts 10-15 minutes before you break your fast, before Maghrib time. That fast has broken. You have to make up that fast. Then come a category of people. If I cover first those who are pregnant and breastfeeding. Pregnant and breastfeeding. The Prophet ﷺ said in authentic hadith, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَدَعَ عَنِ الْمُسَافِرِ الصَّوْمِ وَالشَّطْرُ الصَّاحِ وَعَنِ الْحُبْلَ وَالْمُرْضِ الصَّوْمِ. But the Prophet ﷺ has removed the obligation from the traveller, removed the obligation of fasting and half of salah, because we do qasr. Both of these things apply with the condition of suffer, which I'll come to in a minute. What are the conditions? What does it mean by suffer? And from the hubla is the pregnant. Wal murda' is the breastfeeding. As-sawm, the obligation of fasting. Fuqaha came with various opinions on what to do. It doesn't mean in this case you can't fast like being on the menses. The pregnant woman and the breastfeeding woman can fast, unlike the woman on menses cannot fast. So let's be clear about that. Can fast, but because of the difficulty of being pregnant, or breastfeeding for the child, and staying hungry and thirsty for a long period of time can have an effect, especially with long fasting. Hanafiya said that in this situation of being pregnant or breastfeeding, she should do qada. She should make up the fast that she missed. Nothing came from the Qur'an or the Prophet ﷺ statement in this. That's why the scholars differ. Hanafiya says she should do qada. Shafi'iyya and Hanabila said that if she fears for her own self in these situations of pregnancy and breastfeeding, her fear is for herself or for both the child and herself, then she should do qada only. She should do qada only. But if she fears for a child in pregnancy or for breastfeeding, she fears for a child only, she should do qada and also pay fidya. And I looked at this and I was thinking, it's like putting double penalty. What's the evidence for it? It's what they've taught. There's nothing from Qur'an and Sunnah. But this double penalty, why double penalty? You have to pay the ransom. A ransom of fidya normally compensates the fast. Why does a woman, she's pregnant, she's breastfeeding, she's worried about her child? Oh, in that case, you see, this is lawyers at work. In that case, not only are you going to have to make it up, but you're going to have to pay a ransom as well. But I'm worried about, then she has to say, I'm worried about myself as well, my health. Oh, all right, in that case, it's just qada. I find it very extraordinary and disagree with that anyway. Qada, the Hanafi opinion, is the best opinion in some situations here. However, if we go back to the sources, we find that when Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar from the Sahaba in authentic sources were asked about this, what should a pregnant woman and a breastfeeding feeding woman do? They said that she should break her fast and pay the fidya. They should feed a miskin only. No qada. No qada. And this is reported, as I said, in authentic sources. It's mentioned in Al-Muwatta of Imam Malik. It's mentioned in Abi Dawud in the collection of hadith as well. Aftarata wa at'amata for the al-hubla wal-murda'. This came from Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar. And I think that is the most reasonable opinion. Sheikh Qadawi argues in his fiqh of Siyam, fiqh of Ramadan, something very interesting. He said, the fuqaha put all this qada on, and some of them even the fidya, on women who were pregnant and breastfeeding. And it was especially unjust with Muslim families, and especially in those times, perhaps sometimes are changing now, when a woman, they used to have 7 or 8 children or even more. So look at all the years that they are pregnant, right? And they are breastfeeding. Count all those years that she doesn't fast, and how many months does it become? When the heck is she going to make them up? What kind of penalty is that? Not from the Sunnah. It's as though fuqaha, well, we give them an other, it's their opinions. But I say to you, it's ijtihadi opinion. I personally, and that's only because of knowledge of knowing Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar's opinion, I feel that's the best opinion. That for them, they pay the fidya, and that compensates them, their answer. Sheikh Qadawi said, perhaps if we have a situation, which is Sheikh Qadawi's opinion, and based on ijtihad, where women nowadays perhaps having only 2 or 3 children, then perhaps, and there's big gaps between them, and it's easy then, when they're only having a couple, then it's fine perhaps to do qada in that situation. So he varies between the two. Yeah. So both those opinions are available, and it is the opinion of Shafi'i and Hanabila, this in the exceptional case that I mentioned, that if you fear for your child that you have to give the fidya and the qada. But I strongly disagree with that, and I would say that it's fine for a woman who's breastfeeding and pregnant to pay the fidya through Islamic Relief or any other of these organizations and send it for the whole month. That will count and compensate for her fasting. What about, I'll come to the ill person and the one on a journey, as time is running out faster and faster. It's so difficult to cover this topic in a few hours, but that's what we have. Anyway, what about the elderly? The elderly. And there's a general agreement amongst the scholars, and they took it from the opinion of Abdullah ibn Abbas, famously. Again, nothing came from Qawlun Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nothing came. But Abdullah ibn Abbas says, famously in Sahih Bukhari, he says, and Atar, who is Tabi'i, reports from him, that Abdullah ibn Abbas used to recite, remember the ayah I mentioned earlier on, which I said that some scholars said where you had choice to fast or to pay the fidya, that ayah, right at the beginning. Abdullah ibn Abbas' opinion was it didn't become abrogated. It applies still, but he said it applies, وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ. He said it applies to لِلشَّيْخ كَبِيرٌ وَالْمَرْأَةُ كَبِيرًا. To the elderly man and elderly woman, that applies to them. What applies to them? He says, لا يستطيعان أن يصوماه فيطعمان مكان كل يوم مسكينا. They are not, the elderly man and elderly woman, they are not able to fast. So in place of each fast, they should pay the fidya. They should pay the fidya. But it still gives them a choice. Remember this ayah which I mentioned earlier? Gave you ikhtiyar, a choice. Recommended to fast, but you can pay the fidya. So it left it individually. Who's an old person? Who defines who's old? Do you know who defines it? The person themselves. Because what's old in one culture is not old in another culture. What was old in some time was not old. What we used to say, even in medicine 30 years ago, the elderly were those who were 65 and over and 70. Now, you say elderly to a 65-year-old, they're insulted. Now the elderly are the 80-year-olds and those who are over. Okay? So it changes. Yeah. So it's left defined by culture, society, and the person themselves. And of course we don't mean here, I say to my children, I'm getting old. I don't think in 50s I suddenly decide I'm under this sheikh. Notice it doesn't say sheikh. It says Sheikh al-Kabir. Because sheikh in Arabic culture can mean those who are over 50s. They're sheikh. Not sheikh because they're alims or scholars, but sheikh because they were older people. People of wisdom. Yeah? But Sheikh Kabir is the elderly person. Yeah? They're old, da'if, they become weak because of the elder stage. So that's something to clarify about that. Now, included with that category, we will take the ill people. But here we take the ill people who are chronically ill. No hope of getting better. What illnesses do we include in that? Any illness, brothers and sisters. Some scholars said you have to go and get certified and get medical opinion as to whether this illness counts. This is from opinions of scholars from past and present times. But I say to you, no such takalluf and difficulty and obligation came from Qur'an and Sunnah. Qur'an and Sunnah didn't say ill as defined by medical people. Illness means what you see as illness. Chronically ill, any chronic illness which affects the person, we count it as an illness, yeah? And actually, notice here, growing very old comes under the same category. We've already just covered it, haven't we? Incapacity, that's what it's linked with. Just growing old. Very old. But chronically ill doesn't have to be old. Somebody has a chronic illness, they can have it in their 20s, 30s, anytime you can have a chronic illness. An illness from which you won't get better. Sometimes that chronic illness which you won't get better from is a terminal illness and you'll die with it. But it doesn't always have to be terminal. In that case, they can, obviously, no point saying that they're going to have to do qada as for the acutely ill person. Because when are they going to do the qada? They're chronically ill. They're always going to be ill. That's what chronic illness means. They're never going to get better. Hence, they should pay the fidya, the ransom. Yeah? You follow me? That separates off the chronically ill from, now we come to the acutely ill, where Quran talks about the acutely ill, who have to make up the days later. Because acutely ill means they're ill for a certain period of time and they get better. So now they should make up what they left out. And as I said, acutely ill, same thing again. Who decides that I'm ill? Do I have to go and wangle a certificate from the doctor? As many of my, not many, some of my patients do. Try. For work. Yeah? Not for fasting. Nobody's come so far and said, can you give me a certificate? They've asked, actually. They've asked many times. But it doesn't require that. Illness, headache is an illness. Somebody says, how can you say headaches? Everybody gets headaches. You know what headaches are? Headaches vary. What is pain? How do you define it? When somebody says, I've got pain, severe pain, I can't look at this thing and look at the patient and say, yeah, I can tell you've got severe pain. I can see what grade it's at, except what they're saying. So who decides? I decide how much pain I've got, whether I can bear it or not, isn't it? Pain can't be seen by anybody. So pain is part of illness. So illness to be decided by you. And in this case, as I've said before, there are illness that you still try and fast. Last year, when I first started, beginning of Ramadan, 18 hours, I had headache. Quite bad headache, but it was in the evening, and I knew I had 3 hours left. It wasn't going to do any damage to me. I had to bear the pain, so I continued to fast. What if I broke my fast? No problem. But I didn't want to at that stage. So there you have kind of ikhtiyar, choice. But where I'm ill, and number one, it is causing duress for me, putting me into greater hardship than a normal fast. Actually, it is makruh to fast. It is makruh to fast. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, authentic hadith. There was a man in the heat. They were on a journey. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with them. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a load of Sahaba gathered around this man. They said, what's going on here? Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. They said, Ya Rasulullah, it's a fasting person. And they were shading him. All this, around this fasting person. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is not from fasting. There's no good in this. There's no good in this type of fasting. In other words, he should break his fast. Which he said in other versions, which we'll come to in a minute. So the idea of it's causing so much duress with your illness, yeah, then it's makruh. If it makes your illness worse, and in danger of life being even threatened, then it becomes haram for you to fast. We're clear about that. And while I mention that, I may as well mention the issue of those who are asthmatics, for example. I mentioned it previous years as well. You have asthmatics and bronchitics who are wheezing away. Yeah, and he wants to fast, and I can understand, yeah, he's elderly and he wants to fast. But they also don't want to use the inhaler. He's going to kill himself. And here's the issue of the inhaler. And some people find it shocking when I've said it over the years. I've said to them, go and use an inhaler. Yeah, you can fast if you want, but it doesn't break your fast. You're not eating it. It's going into your lungs. Going into your lungs. Oh, what if a little bit goes back of the throat? People are obsessed with this. Prophet ﷺ said, if accidentally you eat and drink, that wasn't a little bit of droplet going in the back of your throat. You drank a glassful and took a meal. And then you thought, oh my God, I was fasting. What did Prophet ﷺ say? Astaghfirullah, you terrible, wretched person. Now you have to make up 60. Didn't say that. He said, continue your fast. Continue your fast. Because Allah fed him and gave him to drink. Subhanallah. This is this thing. So a bit of powder went in the back of my throat. Come here, you know. You know why? Because, we'll come to that later on perhaps if we get time. Because Fuqaha said this. Hanafi had great problems with even wudu. Imam an-Nawawi argues against him and says, what is this? When eating and drinking doesn't break the fast if it's done accidentally. So accidentally I'm making wudu and a little droplet goes at the back of my throat, and Hanafi said, oh, your fast's broken. Well, he didn't drink a glass of water, he didn't mean to do it on purpose. Why have you broken his fast for him for? I know we others argue. That's why Jamhur of Fuqaha said no. Shafi'i and Abdullah said no, it doesn't break his fast. It's accidental. But he should try. Prophet ﷺ, therefore, to help us, said, from those making wudu, Prophet ﷺ said, make wudu, and when you do istinshaq is taking water in your nose. Then exaggerate that, except if you're fasting. Yeah. Sniff it right up, in other words, the water. Exaggerate it. Yeah. He didn't say exaggerate, by the way, about taking water in the mouth. Yeah. And this gargling. This is not from the Sunnah. Prophet ﷺ said nowhere in wudu making, if you look at all the hadith of wudu, about having to gargle. Now I've seen many people that do it, they think it's actually Sunnah to gargle. It is not from the Sunnah. It is fine. It's not wrong to do it. But don't think somebody who's not gargling, what kind of wudu are you making? You do gargle. Prophet ﷺ never said, gargle is gargara. Sounds very similar to the word gargle actually. Prophet ﷺ never used it in any single authentic hadith to do gargara. Madmada. Madmada is just washing your mouth. So istinshaq, he said, don't do it, exaggerate it. So if I'm fasting and I do that, and accidentally a few droplets go in my throat, well, according to Hanafis, you've broken your fast, I'm sorry to tell you. Here I don't agree with the Hanafis. There's nothing to say you broke your fast at all. Ill person, inhalers, that's where I was. So inhaler is going in the lungs. So some people said, what about smoking then? He's not eating his smoke. Yeah, he's right. I don't believe smoking breaks your fast. I believe smoking is makruh or haram. Why do you want to do makruh or haram while you're fasting? On that basis, I think smoking is disallowed when you're fasting, before you misquote. Be clear. It's not the smoke going in your lungs that's breaking your fast. But smoke is damaging to the health. And at least it's makruh, yeah? And at best it's haram. So it should be avoided because of that, because while you're fasting, you don't want to be doing things which certainly are haram, and also you don't want to be doing things which are makruh. Remember the other exception, of course, is Quran mentions as safar, travel. There's much debate and lots of ikhtilaf and difference of opinion on this issue. Why? Because Quran and authentic Sunnah did not define safar except by that word itself. Hence fuqaha had big difference of opinion on it. That's the first aspect of it. What is the journey? Second, once one is a musafir or on safar, whether it is better to fast or better to break the fast. In this, there's difference of opinion. Or are you allowed to fast, or do you have to break the fast? Which is better? The best way to look at this, in fact, the topics of doing qasr for salah and whether to break your fast are both linked with the definition of safar. Qasr for salah means shortening your prayer. Yeah? Whatever we apply for one applies to the other. Yeah? Applies to the other. So whatever distance or situation we call somebody a musafir in, they are able then to shorten their prayer. And also they are able to break their fast. The same criterion, in other words, apply to both issues. Because nothing came clear, as Ibn al-Qayyim said, Ibn al-Qayyim was Hanbali, a great Faqih, was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, the great Ibn Taymiyyah, also Hanbali of course. Ibn al-Qayyim said nothing came from the Sunnah in regards to distance, that what needs to be looked at is what is safar in a culture, what does safar mean? And I believe the best opinion really is to look at that issue. What is considered to be a journey not linked with distances and time, or whether you're going on a donkey or a camel or walking or running and increasing the number of days. Because some scholars went down that road of looking at how difficult is it. Yeah? And how difficult was it at Prophet's time and applying it like that. But no conditions came from Quran and Sunnah with the travel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom and mercy just left it as travel. So what we see in our culture, that I'm going on a trip, I'm traveling. That is the crunch and the key from where it should be decided. Not to do with distance and mileage. Others said similarly. But because nothing became fixed, Fuqaha, Shafi'iyya, Hanabila, Hanafiya used other things. They used something which was really linked from hadith with the accompanying, a woman accompanied by a mahram. The hadith mentions that if a woman goes on a journey of one day, one night, then she should be, no woman taking a journey of a day and night should go without a mahram. Another hadith mentioned 3 days, meaning 3 days and nights. Interesting, those hadith, firstly, that it mentioned that the journey should be of that length. People translated it into the fact that she was going away for more than 1 day and 2 or 3 days. But if you look at it, reality is, the best interpretation is that the journey is of that length. So if the journey of travel is not more than 1 day and night or more than 3 days and nights, there's no need for a mahram to travel with her. See what difference it does to the actual interpretation. Not that she's away for that. It said masira. Masira is the length of the travel. Yeah. Not once you've gone to some place and settled there. That's not seen as a masira, but the journey time. Journey time is the flying and the travelling by car, not while you're over there. However, these are hadith and nothing to do with safar in the case of Ramadan. They had to do with a totally different topic, which was the accompanying of the mahram. The only thing you can use in this regard is to do with qasr of salah and to do with fasting. So actually that's not the best application of them. And because of that, you had the difference of opinion of the length of journey as long as your arm. Hanafiya themselves, some say 48 miles nowadays, some say 58 miles. Shafi'i said 65 kilometers, which must be what, 30 odd miles a day? So just, you carry on, and there's so many opinions in regards to that. So one can follow that opinion, that's fine. I've got no problem with it. But I'm saying it isn't set in stone. These are opinions of ulama, what they've decided from their mindset to do. Nothing came from Qur'an and Sunnah. And I'll show you some evidences now which will actually counter this kind of argument. Which will counter this kind of argument. Because of that, actually, because nothing came direct from Sunnah, Sahaba and Tabi'een, before the ulama and scholars came, like Abu Hanifa, Shafi, Ibn Hanbal and Malik, before they came, Sahaba and Tabi'een had different practices and opinions on when they decided to break their fast and when they decided to do qasr. Sahaba themselves. So all that variation is allowed. Yeah? So if I look at the Sahaba in their difference of opinion, it is reported in Sahih Muslim. And here's the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. So that's where I look at. Anas radiallahu anh in Sahih Muslim says that كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا خرج مسيرة ثلاثة فراسخ صلى ركعتين. Sahih Muslim, and it says that the Prophet ﷺ, when he used to go out, meaning go out to the city, on a journey, masira, of 3 farasikh. Farasikh was a measuring distant time at their time. 1 farsakh equals 3 miles. When he went out on a journey of 9 miles, he would do qasr. 9 miles. Nothing about whether he went by foot. Generally, he wouldn't go by foot, he'd travel by camel. So Anas is saying that. So about 9 miles, Prophet ﷺ travelled outside the city and he's doing qasr. Qasr would mean that it applies to Ramadan. He's a musafir as well. Even though the hadith only mentions qasr. Remember what I said, it's linked, the same thing, definition is linked with fasting as well. We also have an authentic report in Ibn Abi Shayba's collection from Ibn Umar. Ibn Umar, when he travelled for 1 mile outside Medina, he would do qasr. Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar, 1 mile outside the city. Ali radiallahu anhu's opinion is famous in authentic athar. He said that journey starts when the houses of the town and city disappear. So when I go outside Manchester, even on the motorway, you know where the city houses disappear. That was Ali's opinion, or what he called the journey. Interesting, isn't it? These are authenticated. So you find there's a difference of opinion even amongst the Sahaba before you even go to Tabi'een, and you can see Tabi'een and the ulama and scholars afterwards. So, how do we best deal with it? In my opinion, it's fine to follow if you want to stick to your 48 miles or whatever. What I follow is generally leaving the city. Leaving the city to travel. And you feel that you're taking a trip to London or you're taking a trip to another town, you're taking a trip. That is your travel. Travel, taking a trip. Not taking a trip to the other side of Manchester, but taking a trip to visit somebody in a different town or city without really any limits on, have to wait till you get to 48 miles or 35 miles or 65. Yeah? But you feel you're a traveller. Service stations are on the way, you're on the way to your journey. Yeah? That's the opinion I follow. What do we do in that situation in regards to fasting, which is our topic? Of course, qasr is the topic of salah. What is it best to do? And here we have a whole group of ahadith that we have to bring together. If you take 1 or 2 of them, you'll get a different idea and different opinions. There are hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, for example, Sahabi, it's mentioned in Bukhari Muslim, called Hamza ibn Amr al-Aslami. He said to the Prophet ﷺ, Asumu fi safar, Ya Rasulullah, can I fast on a journey? And this is journey as defined. Yeah? وَكَانَ كَثِيرَ الصِّيَامِ. The hadith says, and he used to do a lot of fasting. فَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ إِن شِئْتَ فَصُمْ وَإِن شِئْتَ فَافْطِرْ. If you wish, you can fast. If you wish, you can break it. This is Bukhari Muslim. Then another one. Prophet ﷺ was asked in one riwayah in Sahih Muslim, same person. He says, "Ajid minni quwwa ala as-sawm fi as-safar, ya Rasulullah." He said, I have strength even though I'm on a journey to fast. فَهَلْ عَلَيَّ جُنَاحٌ. Is there any problem with that on me? Yeah, is there a problem? فَقَالْ هِيَ رُخْصَةٌ مِنَ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال. Prophet ﷺ said, it is a rukhsa, a facility from Allah Ta'ala. فَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِهَا فَحَسَنٌ. Whoever takes this rukhsa, it's good. فَحَسَنٌ وَمَنْ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يَسُومْ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِ. And whoever wishes and wants to fast or loves to fast, then there's no problem for them. So you can do either. Yeah. And then the Prophet's companions, another hadith in Bukhari Muslim. These are very famous hadith. The Sahaba say, كُنَّا نُسَافِرْ مَعَ النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ فَلَمْ يَعُبَّ الصَّائِمْ عَلَى الْمُفْطِرِ وَلَا الْمُفْطِرْ عَلَى الصَّائِمِ. This is beautiful. Sahaba say, we used to go out on a journey with the Messenger of God. And those who were fasting didn't used to look down and blame those who broke their fast. And those who broke their fast didn't look down and blame those who were fasting. So both happened. Both happened. There is one hadith which is very important for us to understand. And some just use that hadith, and therefore it is the opinion of the Hanbalis that you must not fast. Jumhur opinion, or majority of scholars of the Hanafiya and the Shafi'iyya and the Malikiyya, that they say actually it is recommended that you fast even though you're on a journey. It is recommended you fast. And they take these kind of hadith. But we need to look at the other hadith as well, which is a very important hadith. The hadith to do with Fatu Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ came out from Medina with so many Sahaba, and the time when Mecca was conquered or opened. So this hadith relates to that time. Reported by Jabir. It is authentic hadith, mentioned in various places, and one narration in Sahih Muslim. Jabir says that Rasulullah ﷺ came out in the year of Fath, and it was in Ramadan, of course. إلى مكة to Mecca في رمضان فصام حتى بلغ قراء الغميم, until he reached this place, قراء الغميم. So this is a hadith of قراء الغميم. That's how it's known as. فصام الناس, and all the people were fasting as well. In one report, which gives the context to what happened here, in Muslim, قيل له, it was said to the Prophet ﷺ, إن بعض الناس قد شق عليهم الصيام. For some people, for some Sahaba, it is becoming very difficult on this journey for them to continue to fast. In other words, they're suffering. وَإِنَّمَا يَنْظُرُونَ فِي مَا فَعَلْتَ. And they are only looking to see what you're going to do, Ya Rasulullah. So the Prophet ﷺ, what did he do? He called for a container of water. And he was on his camel, so everybody could see him. He took the container of water and he drank from it in front of them all. He broke his fast in front of them. He was fasting as well. That's why I say to you, all this idea of breaking the fast, or look at this is sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is this deen of Yusuf. So the Prophet ﷺ called for this container of water, فَرَفَعَ حَتَّى نَظَرَ النَّاسِ, and he lifted it up until everybody could see. Yeah? He's showing them. Yeah? ثُمَّ شَرِبَ, then he drank. فَقِيلَ لَهُ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ, after this, look at the context of the hadith, why he did it. People were suffering. After this, it was said to him, in the ba'd al-nas qad sam, some people are still fasting. You know what he said? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Ulaika al-usa, ulaika al-usa." They are the disobedient ones. They are the disobedient ones. Whereas you might think now, when I've mentioned hadith others and this hadith, there's a contradiction. No, there's no contradiction. Why are they disobedient? Because they were unduly suffering and they continued to fast. It was linked with the suffering. Because Sahih Muslim mentioned, قَدْ شَقَّ عَلَيْهِمْ. And you link that with the other hadith of the person who's being shaded and is suffering, almost fainting, on a journey. And the Prophet said, there's no good in this kind of fast. There's no good in this. That's why a strong statement like, ذَلِكَ الْأُسَاء, they're the disobedient ones. That's why Hanabila took from this hadith. I said to you earlier, Ahmad ibn Hanbal and others, they said, forbidden to fast when you're on a journey, because they took this hadith. But they have to take the other hadith as well, to show that there is actually choice, except if you're suffering. So, the best opinion I found was that of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Umar bin Abdul Aziz is from Khulafa Rashid. We're talking about in the latter part of the 1st century Hijrah. Umar bin Abdul Aziz is known as the second Umar. And many scholars say he brought back Khilafah Rashida, the rightly guided caliphate. He was a pious and scholarly person. His opinion, as recorded, is do what is best for you when you're on a journey. And that is the best opinion. Do, he said, what is best and easiest for you. If it is easy and you're on a journey and you feel you can fast and you rather not make it up later, then fast. If you're feeling difficulty, break your fast. Make it up later. If that's what's easier for you. And that's the best opinion. Sheikh Qadawi's opinion is the same when he quotes him. And I believe that's the best opinion in regards to the issue of travel and fasting. In other words, again, it's left to yourself. And let me finish with the travel idea with one more hadith, which is beautiful in Bukhari Muslim, to show you also that breaking the fast in Ramadan is not less than fasting always. I've already given you an example of that, that when somebody's fasting and they're going through difficulty, the Prophet is calling them as disobedient. This hadith mentions that Prophet and Sahaba were out on a journey. There were those who were fasting. فَلَمْ يَعْمَلُوا شَيْءٍ. On this journey, they stopped somewhere. They were fasting, they didn't do anything from the Sahaba. There were those, وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ أَفْطَرُوا, those who broke their fast on the journey. They weren't fasting. Of course, in Ramadan. They were doing all the work. They were looking after the animals, they were putting up the tents, they're putting up because they're out on a journey. So somebody's got to do all the setting and preparing everything and the food. So they were doing it all, the ones who were not fasting. So Prophet ﷺ said, he said, فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ذهب المفطرون اليوم بالأجر. He said, the ones who have broken their fast, they've run away with all the rewards today. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. See? And that's beautiful to know, isn't it? That breaking the fast isn't always negative. And we have to bring that idea out of our heads and realize how beautiful and easy this deen is.